Late Romantics and Prose Writers. Lord Byron. George Gordon Byron, born in London in 1788, was an iconic Romantic poet who led a life marked by complexity and controversy. Growing up in Aberdeen, Scotland, he inherited the title of Baron Byron at a young age. His early life was characterized by family turmoil and a deep sense of isolation, partly due to a congenital foot deformity and his parents' abandonment. Byron also discovered his bisexuality during his youth, adding to his inner turmoil. Educated at Aberdeen Grammar School and later Trinity College, Cambridge, Byron embarked on his poetic journey. His first collection, Fugitive Pieces, was published anonymously in 1806, containing poems penned as early as age 14. It faced criticism for its explicit content and ridicule of teachers. Byron withdrew most copies and started a revised version, which remained unpublished during his lifetime. In 1807, he published Hours of Idleness, which included poems addressed to his beloved John Edelston. Struggling with mounting debts by his early 20s, Byron faced harsh criticism from reviewers. Responding with English Bards and Scotch Reviewers, he sought to defend his work. However, public humiliation led him to undertake a Mediterranean tour, embracing his newfound sexual freedom and later choosing to live in Greece. Byron's return to England in 1811 marked a turning point. The publication of the first two cantos of Childe Harold's Pilgrimage in 1812 made him an overnight sensation. His fame, primarily among the aristocratic class, foreshadowed the rising middle-class reading public. Byron was welcomed into prestigious households and gained a legion of fans. In addition to his literary success, Byron became an influential politician in the House of Lords. He used his popularity to advocate for workers' rights and social reforms. However, his personal life was tumultuous, marked by a failed marriage and accusations of misconduct. Love affairs, including one with Claire Clairmont, further added to his notoriety. In 1816, Byron's life took a darker turn. Fearing for his safety and reputation, he fled England and settled in Italy. There he embarked on his masterpiece Don Juan, a satirical novel in verse. He also engaged in the Greek War of Independence. Byron's health deteriorated and he succumbed to illness in 1824 at the age of 36, leaving Don Juan unfinished. His friends, possibly fearing scandal or seeking to protect his image, burned his unpublished memoir. Today, Byron's Don Juan is celebrated as one of the most significant long poems in English literature since Milton's Paradise Lost. His legacy endures with the Byronic hero, a character marked by passion, talent, and rebellion, leaving an indelible mark on Romantic poetry. Byron's notable works include Beppo, Childe Harold's Pilgrimage, Don Juan, English Bards and Scotch Reviewers, Hours of Idleness, Manfred, The Bride of Abydos, The Corsair, The Prisoner of Chillon, and The Two Foscari. English Bards and Scotch Reviewers. English Bards and Scotch Reviewers, written by Lord Byron and published in 1809, is a satirical poem that made a significant impact on Byron's literary career. The poem initially appeared anonymously and parodied the style of juvenile satires. It was later expanded in a second edition in the same year, with Byron taking credit as the author. The poem's origins can be traced back to a scathing and humiliating review of Byron's first book of poetry, Hours of Idleness, published in the Edinburgh Review by Henry Brougham. This review, often republished alongside Byron's works, lambasted the young poet's early efforts, which were considered juvenile and undistinguished. In response to this review, Byron penned English Bards and Scotch Reviewers. While he mistakenly attributed the criticism to Francis Jeffrey, his anger and frustration drove him to write with a passion and care that elevated his poetic skills, setting the stage for his future success. The poem employs heroic couplets influenced by Alexander Pope's The Dunciad and takes aim at the leading poets of the Romantic era, including William Wordsworth, Samuel Taylor Coleridge, and Francis Jeffrey, the editor of the Edinburgh Review. Byron championed neoclassical poets such as Pope and John Dryden instead. English Bards and Scotch Reviewers went through multiple editions, but Byron eventually suppressed the fifth edition in 1812 due to his changing attitudes towards those he had criticized. The poem is referenced in Tom Stoppard's play Arcadia and in John Edward Williams' novel Stoner, where an inept graduate student confuses it with John Keats's work. Byron's biting satire and critique of his literary contemporaries left a lasting mark on the poetic landscape of his time. Childe Harold's Pilgrimage. Childe Harold's Pilgrimage is a significant narrative poem written by Lord Byron in four parts and published from 1812 to 1880. It is dedicated to land and tells the story of a world weary young man seeking solace and distraction from a life of hedonism by embarking on travels through foreign lands. The poem is a reflection of the melancholy and disillusionment experienced by a generation wearied by the wars of the post revolutionary and Napoleonic eras. The title, Childe, harks back to a medieval term denoting a young man on the path to knighthood. Byron's work was widely imitated and contributed to the popularity of the Byronic hero, a wanderer who falls into a contemplative melancholy as he encounters scenes of natural beauty. Childe Harold's Pilgrimage is marked by its autobiographical subjectivity, which left a significant impact not only on literature but also on other forms like music and painting, becoming a central element of European Romanticism. The plot of the poem follows the adventures of the youthful Harold, disenchanted with worldly pleasures and eager to share his thoughts and emotions through poem. In Canto 1, he travels through Spain and Portugal, recounting the brutality of the French invasion. Canto 2 sees him in Greece, where he is inspired by the nation's past grandeur while witnessing its contemporary subjugation by the Turks. Canto 3 places Harold on the battlefield of Waterloo, and from there he journeys along the Rhine and crosses into Switzerland, captivated by its scenic beauty and historical significance. In Canto 4, Harold commences his exploration of Italy from Venice, mourning the loss of its heroic and artistic past and lamenting the region's fragmented state. The poem is both a travelogue and a deeply introspective work that explores themes of disillusionment, passage of time, and the beauty of nature and art. Manfred and Beppo. Manfred, a dramatic poem, is a closet drama composed by Lord Byron in 1816 to 70. This work incorporates supernatural elements, aligning with the prevailing interest in ghost stories in England during that era. It stands as a quintessential example of Gothic fiction. Byron commenced the creation of Manfred in late 1816, merely a few months following the renowned ghost story sessions with Percy Bysshe Shelley and Mary Shelley, which initially inspired Frankenstein. The poem consistently alludes to the supernatural, infusing the narrative with eerie and uncanny elements. Manfred has had a notable musical adaptation by Robert Schumann in 1852, resulting in a composition titled Manfred, dramatic poem with music in three parts, and later by Ilya Tchaikovsky in his Manfred Symphony. Friedrich Nietzsche found inspiration in the depiction of a superhuman character in the poem, leading him to create a piano score in 1872 titled Manfred Meditation based on it. Plot of the play. Manfred portrays the life of the eponymous character, a Faustian noble residing in the Bernese Alps. He is tormented internally by a mysterious guilt closely connected to the death of his beloved Astarte. To find solace, Manfred employs his command of language and spell casting to conjure seven spirits, hoping they can provide him with forgetfulness. However, the spirits, each governing different aspects of the material world, are unable to influence past events and consequently cannot grant Manfred's request. Trapped by fate, he is initially thwarted in his quest for relief through suicide. Ultimately, Manfred chooses defiance over redemption from sin and perishes, resisting the religious temptations presented to him. Throughout the poem, he steadfastly challenges all the authoritative forces he encounters and opts for death over submission to the formidable spirits. His final words are directed at the abbot, with Manfred stating, "Old man, 'tis not so difficult to die." Remaining indomitable until the end, Manfred does not bequeath his soul to either heaven or hell, but solely to death. Beppo. Beppo, a Venetian story, is a lengthy poem crafted by Lord Byron during his sojourn in Venice in 1817. Beppo marks Byron's initial foray into composing using the Italian ottava rima meter, emphasizing satiric digressions. This work serves as a precursor to Byron's most celebrated and generally regarded as his finest poem, Don Juan. The poem comprises 760 verses distributed across 95 stanzas. Beppo narrates the story of a Venetian lady named Laura, whose husband, Giuseppe, has been absent at sea for 3 years. In accordance with Venetian customs, she takes a cavalier servant known as the Count into her companionship. While they participate in the Venetian carnival, Laura attracts the attention of a Turk, who, as it turns out, is her long lost husband. Beppo reveals that he was captured, enslaved, and subsequently liberated by a band of pirates, leading to his own stint as a pirate. After amassing enough wealth, he renounced piracy, returned to claim his wife, and sought to be rebaptized. Laura reconciles with Beppo and befriends the Count. Don Juan. Don Juan, composed by Lord Byron between 1819 and 1824, is a satirical and epic poem that portrays the character Don Juan as not a womanizer, but rather as a man easily seduced by women. Byron's work is written in the Ottawa Rima style and is presented in 16 cantos, marking it as a notable example of genre literature. Although the character of Don Juan was derived from the Spanish legend, the narrative is distinct. The initial publication in 1819 of Cantos 1 and 2 attracted criticism for their perceived immorality, primarily stemming from Byron's unbridled ridicule of contemporary social subjects, individuals, and personages. At the time of Lord Byron's death in 1824, he had penned 16 cantos, leaving the 17th incomplete. Don Juan consists of a poetic narrative encompassing 16,000 lines, divided into 17 cantos, each of which is crafted in Ottawa Rima and 8th rhyme. Each stanza comprises 8 lines of iambic pentameter utilizing an A-B-A-B-A-B-C-C rhyme scheme. The Ottawa Rima structure employs the final rhyming couplet to introduce a touch of humor, often leading to a rhetorical anticlimax by swiftly transitioning from a grandiloquent style of writing to a more mundane or vulgar one. The narrative of Don Juan commences with the protagonist's early life as a young Don Juan grows up in Spain amidst his parents' tumultuous relationship. Following his father's death and before his mother can divorce him, Juan inherits a substantial fortune. His mother, motivated to shelter him from the world's ills, endeavors to educate him, especially concerning matters of sexuality. Despite her efforts, Don Juan experiences the onset of adolescent desires. He embarks on an affair with a woman named Julia, eventually leaving Spain when Julia's husband threatens his life. During his journey away from Spain, Don Juan survives a shipwreck in the Mediterranean and ends up as the sole survivor. He is rescued by a woman named Haydee and they fall in love. However, Haydee's pirate father returns and sells Juan into slavery. After becoming a sex slave to a Turkish princess, he escapes when the Russians attack the Turks. Following his escape, Don Juan distinguishes himself as a Russian war hero during their conflict with the Turks. His empress is Catherine the Great, and she falls deeply in love with him. Although the poem doesn't detail his actions with Catherine, she rewards him with riches and appoints him as an ambassador to England. In England, Byron uses the character of Don Juan to satirize the upper class society and aristocrats he encounters, criticizing their pretentiousness and absurdities. The poem ends with Don Juan potentially engaging in an affair with yet another married upper class woman. Unfortunately, Byron's life was cut short by a fever, and the poem ends somewhat abruptly, leaving Don Juan's story unfinished. The poem is quite lengthy, with over 5,000 lines. Lord Byron penned a scornful dedication of Don Juan to his artistic rival and adversary, Robert Southey, the then Poet Laureate of Britain. In this dedication, Byron addresses Southey's unsuccessful aspiration to surpass all other poets and likens him to a blackbird that has fallen from the sky and struggles to survive. The reference is suggestive of Southey's perceived inadequacy in the realm of romantic conquest.